Hello everyone, Spencer here. We're carrying on our series in The Story. If you remember the story, we're saying the Bible is one big story about God gathering his people to himself so that they will be in the place of rest and of blessing. And it's also the story that makes sense of our lives. It's the story that we're made for. It makes sense of who we are. And tracing through the Bible very quickly, if you remember Adam and Eve, they were made and created and they were placed in the garden. And they were God's people, in God's place in the garden, and they were under God's good rule. But they turned from God, and they were then taken out of the garden, and all of those good promises, people, place, and rule, they are shattered. They turn from God's good rule, and then the people are dispersed, and they are away from the land of blessing. And as we've seen over the weeks, God doesn't leave them there. There's promises bubbling away all the way through the Bible. Abraham is promised that there'll be a great nation that come under him. We see in the Exodus they are taken under Egyptian rule and they are taken into a land of blessing. And then, if you remember last time, David is this great king who has a heart for God and rules rightly and wisely. And there's a promise with him. That promise is that someone from his line, one of his sons, they were going to be the good king that ruled forever, that everything would be made right through him. And we get to this point of the story, and the very next person we meet, the next character, is David's son. It's Solomon. And everything seems to go great to begin with. Solomon, God approaches him and he asks, please give me wisdom. He wants to rule wisely under God's good care. He's wise. And he builds a temple for God to dwell with the people. Everything seems to be coming together. Surely this Solomon, is this it? Is this it? That's the question that everyone would have been asking. Is this the one in David's line that would restore the people in the place under God's rule? When me and Laura were going out, Laura had convinced herself very early that we were going to get married, and for a little while, every time we went to somewhere that looked nice or something that we did was special, she was convinced that I was going to ask her to marry her. She'd be there going, is this it? Is this it? I mean, I only found this out later, but she'd be like, maybe this is the time. And time after time I didn't. Eventually I did ask her. But this sense of, is it it? That's what's going on in this moment. Is Solomon the one? And unfortunately we see that he definitely is not. He quickly turns from so much promise, and yet before you know it, he is drifting off in sin away from God, deliberately turning to idols, rejecting God's good rule. And what do we come to expect? When God's good rule is rejected, then the people scatter and they are away from the land of rest and of blessing. And that is exactly what happens. The generation after Solomon, the kingdom actually splits. You end up with a northern kingdom of 10 tribes and a southern kingdom, Judah, of just 2. And this northern kingdom, you have king after king after king, and all of them, there's just this disappointment as they reject God. And eventually, because they're rejecting God, they are taken by Assyria into exile. And then you have the southern kingdom of Judah. There's some good kings thrown in there, but most of them, again, are rejecting God. There's no consistency. And they are eventually taken by Babylon, and they are scattered into exile. Do you see the problem? The people that were meant to be together, God's people, they are now scattered. The land where they are meant to receive blessing and rest, they are now apart from. And why? Because they've rejected God's good rule. But it's in this context that God speaks. As we've seen so many times as we've looked through the Bible story, when there is disappointment, God speaks into it. And these prophets come. There's lots of different prophets across the different times, some to the northern kingdom, some to the southern. God speaks to both. And he tells them through these prophets why they're in such a mess. Because they've rejected God's rule, they've turned from him. But he doesn't leave them there. He also offers them hope. Great hope. The prophets come and tell of a time when God will save them, cleanse them from their sin, and he will create a new people. He will create a new place, and he will bring a new king who will ensure they live under God's good rule. And I think one of the greatest little snapshots of that is in the book of Ezekiel. In chapter 36 and 37, we see all of these promises coming out. Let me just read a few snapshots of there. We see that God is going to save them and make them a new people. So Ezekiel 36 from verse 26. This is God speaking, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. Then you will live in the land, and I will give I gave your ancestors. You will be my people, and I will be your God. See what he's saying? A promise that you again will be my people. We will be God's people once more. That's the promise he's giving them. And in fact, more than that, he's saying this new people that he will create, he'll give his spirit to. He'll give them a new heart, so they will be able to live under his good rule. He's going to renew them, make them a new people. But he doesn't just make them a new people, he gives them a new land. As we carry on in Ezekiel 36, in verse 33, I will cleanse you from all your sins. He's saying, I'll save you from your sin. I will resettle you in your towns, and the ruins will be rebuilt. The desolate land will be cultivated instead of lying desolate in the sight of those who pass through it. They will say, this land that was laid waste has become like the Garden of Eden. What he's saying? God also promises that he will resettle them in a land like Eden. A land of peace, of rest and of blessing. A land we all want to be in. And then finally he promises a new king. In chapter 37, verse 23, I will save them from all their sinful backsliding, and I will cleanse them. Again, a promise to save them, and what comes through this saving, they will be my people, and I will be their God. My servant David will be king over them, and they will have one shepherd. They will follow my laws and be careful to keep my decrees. They're a promise of David, a new king, David. But this can't be talking of King David that we were learning about last time, because David is long gone. It's talking of one in the line of David. A new king, a new shepherd who will gather his people and ensure that they live under God's good rule. Now, where's all this pointing to? Because we're in the book of Ezra on Sundays at the minute. Is it pointing to this time? I mean, they have returned to the land. They have rebuilt the temple, so in at least some sense, God is with them. It's like the recapturing of the model we saw in the Old Testament before. Well, in part, but there is so much more. This is a promise that is much bigger than the model we've ever seen before. This is a promise that will only truly be fulfilled under the new king, the new shepherd, Jesus. And he is gathering up a people that will be God's people, and he will be our God. And he is the one that will bring us to the land, will bring us to safety, will bring us to blessing, and will bring us to rest. And the question there's a noise. The question that lands with us is, the people here are then holding on. They're holding on, waiting. When will this prophecy come true? When will we see this fully done? We see it at Jesus, but we still hold on. We still wait. Our lives, our story is one of holding on tight. We're all people that are holding on to something. We all hope of something in the future that gives us hope. But this story, this promise, it is true and it is worth it. So let's hold on to that promise. Next time, we'll see Jesus, that new king, that new shepherd. See you then.